Hello. Thanks for sticking around to chat. I know I'm probably what stands between you and lunch right now. So design today is as important as technology. And I am asked by entrepreneurs, not just those who are working on consumer apps, but from fields as diverse as AI, machine learning, robotics, network security. They're all asking me about design. And among the questions that they ask is, why is design such a big deal now, and why should I care about it? And what does it really mean for my company? So to answer this question, I'd like to reflect on the evolution of the automobile industry. So when the Model T first came out, the focus was really on getting the car from point A to point B and laying down infrastructure so that roads could be paved and you could transport people from one place to another. Back then, consumers didn't really have much of a choice in the design of their car. Cars were offered in this model only, in black, or black. But then as the technology became good enough, design became the differentiator. And so it was not only good enough it wasn't just good enough for cars to be fast, but they actually had to look fast, or expensive, or powerful. So design became the differentiator for the car market. And similarly, in the early days of the internet, the major challenges of the day were really about transferring information packets from one proxy server to another, and also working across different operating systems and devices. Technology was so expensive that it required a lot of capital to start a company, and technology wasn't widely in the hands of customers. But today we've reached the point where technology is good enough. We have sensors and chips where we need them, when we need them. We have compute cycles, both in the cloud and in our pockets. We have enough storage for us to record every moment in our lives and play it back. And so bandwidth is now fast enough that the internet just feels like it works. And this isn't to say that all the problems have been solved, all the technological problems have been solved, or that these achievements are evenly distributed across the planet. But the challenges of product development today are now shifting towards building useful and emotional experiences that people can gain from using technology. Another factor driving the rise of design, particularly in enterprise markets, is the consumerization of IT. So as consumer users, we enjoy the simplicity and the power of products like Google Docs and Gmail or Google Search, and we don't want to spend 10 hours a day in Microsoft Outlook or Office anymore. And in fact, Google actually had an explicit strategy of spoiling users at home so they would demand the same tools at work. And moreover, younger generations are just living on the internet, and so they want to use the tools that they feel comfortable with. And to this point, Mary Meeker just published her Internet Trends Report for 2017 and noted that consumer expectations for enterprise software, customer expectations for enterprise software have increased because of the high bar that has been set now by the apps that we use as consumers. UXPin just launched their enterprise UX report, their industry report that was just released like 2 weeks ago. And they note that UX is a relatively new but growing function in many enterprise organizations. Here's a chart from that report, and it's showing that companies, big and small, young and old, are now increasing the ratio of designers to developers in dramatic ways. From IBM to Dropbox, Uber, Atlassian, LinkedIn. And this is resulting in a 2.5-fold increase in designer to developer ratios over the last 5 years alone. So what is design? I want to go through some of the ways that I think about design, because it's become such a generic word that, to some extent, we don't even know what that means anymore. So first, let's start with brand. Let's play a game. I'm going to show you pictures of some cars, and you can shout out at me, what is the brand for this car? Even though I photoshopped the logos out. Volvo, yes. Okay, how about this one? Mercedes. Next slide. How about this one? Okay, these are easy. How about this one? Lexus. Let's see, the last one gets kind of mumbles usually when I ask people about this. Now, some of these cars are easily recognizable. Why is that? Well, they include design elements that get carried over from generation to generation and from across each model of the car in the portfolio. The design of these cars is so consistent that you instantly recognize what they are. And the cars that are less recognizable are, they kind of suffer because they lack this consistency. So for example, Lexus, they at least used to change their designs every 2 or 3 years, and so that creates a less stable mental model in our minds for what that car looks like. Now, to their credit, more recently, you start to see more of an evolution, and things are kind of sticking around. You see some design elements that are staying, and it's left to the viewer to decide, whether it's aesthetically pleasing or not. Now, back to the UX Pin report. The #1 challenge that designers report in their companies is improving the consistency of design in the products that their companies create. And the larger the company, naturally, the harder this problem is because you have that many more people developing and having opinions on the design, and you have that many more products that need to be coordinated. And in my own experience at Google, this was a massive undertaking that only moved forward across the company when Larry mandated from the top that we converge. So while it took us 18 months taking a bottom-up method with no CEO mandate just to converge Google apps into one common look and feel, it took Google only 5 months to converge all of the products across Google to implement a common look and feel across Google products once Larry became CEO and said, we're going to do this. That is critical and essential. So when we think of brands, we often think of logos and identities, but these are just symbols that represent the companies. A company's brand is the user's perception, the consumer's perception of that company and how they feel about you. And that perception is built up over time through experience. When a consumer is interacting with your company, they are building up their perception of your brand. And since most of the interactions that consumers have with companies is through using their products, having a great user experience and a consistent aesthetic language across all the products is the fastest way to build your brand. So that's why design is the brand. Design is also simplicity. So here are some products that are designed and built and sold by Muji. So since we're in Hong Kong, I imagine most of us know what Muji is. There are like 7 Muji stores in Hong Kong alone. And if you're not familiar with Muji, I encourage you to go check out one of their stores. Fabulous place. Muji is a Japanese company that sells common, affordable household items. And they're known for great design at low cost. And Muji refers to its design philosophy as kenketsu, which means simplicity. And their aim is to bring a quiet sense of calm into strenuous everyday lives. There's a zen-like quality to their product design. And even though these products are simple and affordable, they don't feel disposable. Now, simplicity is easy to say, but it's very hard to do. Let's look at the evolution of Google, their homepage, as a case study. So this is what Google looked like in 1999. It actually looks like this because when Sergey put together this page, he didn't really know HTML or graphic design, and so he put together the simplest thing that could be implemented. Okay, by 2001, there are a few more links. There are links asking people to donate to the victims of Katrina, the hurricane. By 2002, there are tabs that are implemented across the top to kind of let people know that they can search across different corpora, not just the web, but images, groups, things like that. By 2006, it becomes a little bit more structured, searching across news, finance, maps. 2007, we introduced the One Google bar, which was to move all that up to serve not only as a way to constrain the scope of your search, but also to navigate to different verticals within Google. And then 2011, it starts to get cleaned up by having this black bar. It wasn't until 2014 that Google truly achieved a simple homepage, even simpler than what it looked like when it first launched. So if you think about it, it took 15 years in the making of a company to achieve this level of simplicity, and it certainly wasn't for lack of talent or for trying. The fact that it took this long shows how difficult it is to really achieve simplicity in the face of many people's opinions, agendas, power struggles, and growing product requirements and features. So it's a simple design, but it was an incredibly difficult journey to get there. So, being simple may make us feel vulnerable, but simplicity is really an achievement. It follows from deep introspection about what really matters. It's a result of hard-won clarity and focus. And these acts reflect virtues such as non-striving, non-attachment, and letting go of fear. Well-designed products are like their makers. They're imbued with modesty, and they don't try to attract your attention for no reason. They're happy to just sit in the background and do the work. Design is also timeless. Okay, let's look at the products from Braun, produced in the middle of the last century under the direction of Dieter Rams. There are a couple of other design talks earlier today, and both of the speakers mentioned Dieter Rams, but I'm actually going to show you some of these products. Okay, Dieter Rams joined Braun in 1955, and he had a 40-year career there, eventually becoming chief design officer. And the key principle that drove the design direction for all of Braun's products during this era was less, but better. The idea here being that products would be stripped down only to what was essential and then amplify what was left and made better. So these products are so streamlined that they're elegant and modern, and they're still relevant, even though they were designed decades ago. And the Braun products that were designed under Dieter Rams' direction have inspired the industrial design for many of the beloved technology products that we have even today. So whether we're talking about product design or graphic design, design is iconic. It's not a fad, it's not showy, it's not trendy, and it's not easily thrown away. Design is in the details. Okay, yet it's often the details that we overlook, maybe because it doesn't seem like they're important enough, or maybe we don't have the time or the resources. But there's no great design unless there's great attention paid to detail. Because the details affect, ultimately, they affect how people feel and perceive you when they interact with your company and your product. So let's take a look at this railing, okay? So it's a pretty boring looking railing. It actually makes you feel like you're sort of in prison when you're walking past it. You contrast this with the railings that are found in Japan. And when you walk past these railings, you can't help but feel like the people behind these railings are always thinking about how they might be able to make the mundane a little bit more delightful. Manhole covers are another example. This is what a typical manhole cover in the US looks like. And yet, when you look at manhole covers in Japan, every single manhole cover is beautiful, inspired, and different, making the journey through the streets of Japan even more entertaining and joyful. So in some contexts, attention paid to design details mean the difference between delighting your users or not. And in other contexts, insufficient attention paid to details can impact conversion, adoption, engagement, and user trust. I have my own story with this recently. I used a Sony picture station at a FedEx Kinko's when I needed to print 8x10 headshots for my daughter, who was in a dance audition. And after about 15 or 20 minutes of clumsily trying to get this kiosk to work, I decided to abort, which resulted in this screen. And it asked me to press some phantom start over button, which didn't exist anywhere on the screen or on the kiosk. And what made this even worse was that it had eaten my credit card and there was no way to get it back. So among the many things that went wrong here, this lack of attention to detail was an egregious oversight. Made me feel really bad too. Now, design is empathy made tangible. Okay? Design details include not only how things look, also how they work and their ability to satisfy your needs and then the emotions that you're left with after you interact with them. So to create a great experience, it requires tremendous empathy for other people. So let's go back to Japan. This is a photo of a ticket counter at a train station in Japan, and you'll notice there's this little plastic strip on the counter that's made there available so that you can hang your umbrella or your cane there and rest it while you fish out your money to buy your train ticket. So whoever designed this must have had tremendous empathy for the whole experience of, buying a ticket at a train station. And moreover, whoever was writing the check to fund the creation of all that plastic and glue it onto the counter must have also supported that designer. So investors take note as well. CEOs, entrepreneurs take note. It's not just from the designer. They have to have support from the very top. Here's another example from my favorite hotel in my favorite city. This is at a hotel called the Upper House, which is located here in Hong Kong. Okay. At the Upper House, there's exquisite attention paid to every detail, both in the aesthetics and in the service design. It feels like a home away from home for guests. Now, during one visit to the Upper House, my husband arrived very early in the morning after a long journey, and as the staff greeted him, they told him that his pancake was ready for him. Now, the staff must have had the foresight to know that my husband would be hungry after this long flight, wanted breakfast, but they went even above and beyond because we love this pancake so much that actually my husband and I call it the life-changing pancake. This blueberry Dutch pancake is so delicious that my husband orders it every single time he eats breakfast at the Upper House. And so the hotel staff must have actually taken the effort to go and look this information up so that they could give him exactly what he wanted before he was even aware that that was what he wanted. So that's a great user experience. Now going back to Google Apps is an example. So we use Google Apps not just because the apps are simple and easy to use, but because of what they allow us to do. The ability to collaboratively create and edit documents with other people in real time, or the ability to archive and search email, that's functionality that people need. And even if they didn't understand at the time that they wanted to be able to do this, Google had the foresight to invent these things before they even existed, before users even would ask for these things. Design is intent. Now, there was a study across 160 websites that looked at the impact of latency on the user experience. And just a delay of 1 second resulted in a 7% decrease in conversions, an 11% decrease in page views, and a 16% decrease in customer satisfaction. So Google really took this insight to heart. And while Braun's principle was less but better, and Muji's was bring calm to people's stressful lives, Google's main design principle has always been fast. This principle has informed how every design decision is, and it's reflected throughout the experience. For example, we show how fast it takes to load results up there when we display the results. We strip away the page from clutter so that users can better focus on the results. And we know from human interface research that black text against a white background provides the most contrast, allowing people to read on screen most efficiently and effectively. Now, while the insight that latency matters was very much a design-driven insight, the commitment to speed went beyond the purview of the user experience and design team. So the company, for example, committed billions of dollars of capital outlay to make sure that we had enough infrastructure to make sure that that search was as fast as possible. There were company OKRs that reflected the company's commitment to reducing latency as much as possible. And this aspect of the user experience could not have been achieved with just the design team alone. When we think about design, we often think about how a product looks. And as makers of technology, we might also understand deeply that design is not just about how a product looks, but it's also about how it works. Okay? Components that enable people to use your product and how it all fits together. But all of that cascades from your company's strategy, values, and principles, and the scope of the problem that you choose to solve. All of that manifests itself in the experiences that you offer. And this chart is taken from Jesse James Garrett's book, The Elements of User Experience, which is like the #1 book. If I had only one book that I could recommend to people to read, this is the book that I refer to all the CEOs and entrepreneurs that I work with if they want to learn more about user experience. Now, I also teach yoga, and just as much as the posture, a person's posture can reflect their inner state, so does your product's design reflect the state of your company. I've seen org charts, power struggles, and agendas manifest in the user interface design. I've also seen lack of coherent strategy, lack of clear values, vision, and principles manifest in the design. And so you need to think about the design from the inside out. You can't fix your design without fixing those deep-rooted internal problems. And that's why every CEO is a designer, whether they recognize it or not. If you think that you can hire a bunch of designers and have them patch over these issues and mask the power struggles, the agendas, the absence of a clear point of view, you're kind of shunning your responsibility to be a designer. So here's a nice way to think about design. You cannot not design, because even if you choose to not design, whatever is the design that you're left with is going to be your design. So there's only careless design or there's thoughtful design. So given the choice between the two, choose to design thoughtfully. Thank you.